What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Red Liberty Media. My name is Angel Quiroz. I am one of the owners here. I would like to introduce you to one of our guests here today. He is an incredible a news journalist, and he is on the OANN channel. Dan Ball, thank you so much for joining us at the stage for everybody. Can you give us a little bit of talk about how you got into reporting the news, into doing journalism? What is kind of your backstory there?
Yeah, I wasn't always this heavily involved in politics as I should have been as a patriotic American and as a journalist. I enlisted in the United States Air Force when I was 17 on delayed entry for a year because I, like many Americans, because I'm of that age, I'm 47, almost 48, I had just watched what unfolded in 1991, the first Gulf War. And that kind of, just like a lot of younger generations that watched the attacks on 9/11, watching the Gulf War kind of got me invigorated to join the military. And my uncle, grandfather, brother, a bunch of us on my dad's side all served in the Air Force. So I had signed up my junior year in high school, went in my senior year, and I knew what I was going to do because I had signed up to be a combat journalist, if you will, to work for the Armed Forces Radio Television Service. Right. So as long as you get through boot camp and your schooling and whatever, when you get out, then you're going to get transferred and sent overseas typically to provide the news to the troops and their family members on forward operating bases. And then if we go to war, you would be a wartime journalist. Thankfully, I never had to see combat. My 4-year tenure was 93, 4, 5, 6. And of course, the country and most of the world was at peace at that time.
Right.
So I got out, I went right into commercial television. And I started as a cameraman, picking up and carrying the gear. It was a hell of a lot heavier back then.
It's even heavy nowadays. And I do some of that camera work too nowadays. So I can imagine what it was like.
Yeah, it's nothing anymore. Come on. I got a cell phone right here on a tripod with a light and a microphone. It weighs like 5 pounds. Back in the day, you carried a massive camera and a big record deck on these big old 3/4 tapes. Right. You had a battery belt that weighed 25 with a massive light on top of it, and then the gear bag, and then the 20-pound tripod. So we carried about 80 to 100 pounds of gear. Anyway.
I just want to dive in there just a second, because it's interesting. This is kind of a selfish question for me, but as somebody that is coming from kind of behind the camera, and I mean, I've seen your show, your presence is great. You know, you're able to kind of flow off the top of your head, and you have so much knowledge on all the things that you talk about. What was that transition like, going from behind the scenes to now being in front of the camera and being kind of having your own show? Is that a big leap for you, or is that something kind of that came naturally?
No, not really, because I mean, you know, I went into the military at 18 years old. And again, within a few months of boot camp, a few months of broadcast journalism school, I think it was only 5.5, 6 months of schooling, you get sent overseas. So within a year, you're overseas broadcasting live on radio and television to the troops. Wow. So actually I started, if you will, on air in the military. Then when I got out, the first job in the civilian realm was as a cameraman, because I remember this like it was yesterday. Which is kind of funny, especially with the state of journalism today, which is in disarray. I remember the first news director that hired me said, "Yeah, you can't be on TV." And I said, "Why not?" He goes, "You have no experience. Where's your degree?" And I said, "Well, I don't have a piece of parchment paper on the wall from some snotty ass liberal university that tells me I can be a journalist. I did it for 4 years in the United States Air Force. So I have a real world experience." And he said, "Nope, doesn't count," as he was hiring college kids right out of college that have only been on like college radio or TV. So I said, okay, fine. So it wasn't a hard transition. I was only a photog for about 6 months. And then that news director got fired. Thank goodness.
Wow.
A younger female news director got hired, who was my age and bold, and said, "Hey, you did this, right?" I'm like, "Yeah, I did." She's like, "Go home, shave, get a suit on, you're a reporter tomorrow." And that was it. And then I was a reporter from there on out.
Wow.
And then slowly you work your way up. You know, you try to fill in as the anchor man, and then maybe you're a weekend anchor, which I was. Then you're a morning anchor, and then you make it to that all coveted evening anchor, the prime time most trusted news man or woman.
Right.
And yeah, I did that for many, many years. And back in 2018, I decided to run for Congress because I had been watching, unfortunately, from the sidelines, how corrupt the media had become. Because when I got into it in the 90s, people were still doing their damn jobs as journalists. At least I'd like to hope so. I thought so, right? I know I was. I was remaining neutral and giving people the facts. And so in 2018, it was actually 17, we launched our bid for Congress in the 36th Congressional District of California, Sonny and Mary Bono's old seat, because I just gotten so fed up. I was so tired of the crooked politicians on both sides of the aisle. And then the industry was losing its luster, if you will. You know, I was getting disenfranchised with the biz, if you will. I was like, ugh. I mean, everybody's taking sides left, right, or lying, or spewing narratives, skewing the narrative this way on a story or that way. And so journalism had kind of lost its appeal to me. And I went, well, how can I serve again? Because to me, I'd been serving in the military. I was serving in those communities by telling the news, hey, I'll run for Congress and try to serve my fellow mankind in the halls of Congress, busting balls, pardon the pun, in DC, because I think a lot of balls needed busted on both sides of the aisle, especially at that time, Republicans. And the reason I say that is because I had watched what the media and what Republicans had done to President Donald Trump in 2016. Right. And I had seen how they lied. And I already, you know, being a conservative, you already expect to have Democrats be the way they are. Right. But when you have Republicans act a certain way that differs from your conservative values and principles, that's even more of a letdown. And
it feels like a stab in the back.
There you go. Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I want to touch on a little bit of what you mentioned about journalism and essentially losing its luster. I think that's such a great way to put it. So I'm 33, right? So I have a brief recollection of being a kid and hearing some unbiased reporting or journalism happening, but it's very brief. You know, by the time I'm paying attention to politics, Donald Trump is running for office, like the aisles are already split. For you, as somebody that's been in this field, what were some of like the moments or the beacons of light, I guess you could say, within journalism where you're like, okay, there's still a chance for journalism to kind of keep going?
Wow, there's so few and far in between. I got to think about it. Geez. Well, obviously, most recently in the last couple of years, loving watching what Project Veritas and my buddy James O'Keefe does over there. You know, some people don't like the Gonzo style attacks and going after them, but let me tell you what, sometimes it's the only way to get the damn truth.
Absolutely.
And I don't view it as entrapment. I view it as, think about this. When a politician or another journalist, because his recent videos have been busting journalists, or the CEO of a big pharma company, or whomever it may be, when there's a camera in front of them, do you think they're giving you the 110% God's honest truth? No, they're performing. Definitely. And most likely, if they're a politician and their lips are moving, they're lying. Right. So sometimes you got to use tactics to go get the bad guy. And I had done those tactics before, not necessarily undercover camera work, but the tracking them down and going after them on the street with the camera and the mic. I actually love that style because you can't get somebody to respond to the people that they're supposed to be answering to, right? And whether it be a CEO and he's not responding to his shareholders and he's crooked, or it's a politician not listening and responding to his constituents, then a reporter should take it upon themselves to get off their asses and go get the answers. So Project Veritas is one. I loved watching Ivory Hecker and April Moss. April's from the Detroit CBS station, and Ivory, I think, from the Fox Houston, Texas station. Both those strong women working in local news like I did had, once again, the balls or intestinal fortitude to stand up on the air live. And I had not seen that done. I should have done that when I was in a local market and they were telling us to skew a narrative. I just left the biz and went into politics and now back to TV. But those two ladies, let me tell you, to watch them during a live report just shock the hell out of their bosses, their coworkers, and the viewers by 1 minute, like Ivory's talking about getting your air conditioner, serviced, and we're doing a report about the heat last summer, and switch it right to, hey, I'm going to break this with Project Veritas and tell you about Fox News Corp spewing lies and trying to force me to. So those two plus James, just then the birth, like look what you're doing, the birth of all these online podcasts, websites, radio shows, whatever it may be, that have launched in the last few years, because Americans like yourself have noticed that corporate media is corrupt, biased as hell. And so regular Americans like you and many, many others are now launching these independent journalist websites and podcasts and blogs. And I freaking love it because you're getting more information now from independent journalists that's factual, even though, once in a while there's some conspiracies, whatever, but at least you're getting more factual information and you're even getting the information. than
Right.
you get from some of these assholes you see behind me right here. I have all the TVs in my office because I have to monitor the liars every day. I've got CNN, I've got MSNBC, I've got Fox of the prime three that I
Right.
watch. And then, of course,
What it seems like is that it's so far removed from the actual story, right? Like I follow somebody on Instagram. His name is Anthony Cabasa, and so he does a lot of work on the border in like Texas area and Southern California. And what's interesting is that I'm seeing his post of something that he saw, he was there for, right on my telephone screen, and I know that he filmed it, as opposed to watching something on the news that has gone through this whole, processing, this whole process, this whole vetting thing that happens.
Vetting they do,
Yes.
to make it skew. Remember
Right.
the Project Veritas audio tapes from last year where you heard 2 months of recordings of Jeff Zucker, the former CEO of CNN, in the morning news meeting. They shouldn't even call it that. And I've been in probably thousands after 20 some years of the morning news meeting. I've been in tons. That's where folks don't know that are watching you. A news director, the person that runs the newsroom, the assignment managers, the photographers, the reporters, the producers and writers all meet. And you talk about what are the big topics of the day? What stories are you going to cover today?
Right.
And then you figure those out, and then you divide them and assign them out, and you go on your way. But if people don't know, go look him up, by the way. Jeff Zucker on his morning calls would get on there. And this is a freaking CEO.
Right.
Usually CEOs don't get involved in morning news calls. Okay. And I've worked for Tribune, Clear Channel, Nexstar, some major corporations in the news business.
Wow.
Nobody at the top level ever got on the freaking phone and the 9 o'clock meeting and would tell us how to skew a story. Jeff Zucker did it almost freaking daily. I mean, for instance, some of those recordings. Okay, now this was during the campaign part. If you show video of Joe Biden, make sure we got the aviators and him looking, younger than he is, and moving good and fluid to make him appeal to people and appear virile and strong. And if you got Trump and you use an image or whatever, make sure he's got his mouth open or he's yelling or he looks bad. Like that's the kind of just little shit like that.
Right.
That independent journalists don't do that. No journalist should ever do that.
Right.
But you have a CEO telling journalists, hey, now here's how you're going to do it. And then and then the recordings went on for 2 months, all kinds of stuff about, hey, the COVID coverage is going to be this. Hey, the Chinese coverage is going to be that. I mean, they were skewing the narrative. Now, thank goodness, I can tell you in almost 20 some years, and I was in local newsrooms, not corporate newsrooms, even though some of those local affiliates were owned by big corporations. I never once had a news director or a general manager that ran that station come to me and say, you will skew this story that way or else. So thank God, knock on wood. And now I'm at a place where One America News, the owner and his sons that run this place, this is a mom and pop. This is not corporate news America like CNN, Fox,
that's amazing.
Even Newsmax. This is a hardworking 80-year-old man and his 2 kids opened up this shop 8-9 years ago and said, let's tell the damn truth. They hired me 18 months ago and said, we've been doing it 8-9 years. You've been doing it 27 years. You know what to do. Don't get us in trouble and kicked off the air, but go. That's it. Go. They don't come to me and go, you will cover this. You won't cover that. You will put this guest on. You'll never put that guest on. Never have heard it. We don't do that. That's bullshit. We don't do that here. But I guarantee you it's done at Fox News. It's done at Newsmax. And we know it's done at all the left-wing mainstream media, which makes up about 95% of all media in this country.
Unfortunately.
Is left-leaning.
Absolutely. It's interesting that you bring that up because, one of the things that's happened recently, and I would have to ask you about this if you're on here and I'm talking to somebody with so much experience, but the way the coverage has been set about Ukraine and Russia has been one of the most telling, I think, experiences that I've seen play out on general media in I don't know how, since I've been paying attention to politics. And, what I'm kind of seeing is like a cohesive narrative for the first time in years with Fox News and CNN and even Newsmax and stuff.
Warmongering.
What is your opinion on what's actually happening?
And I can tell you, most every vet out there, nobody wants to go to war ever. It's the last resort. And it pains me to watch these network scum get on there and warmonger.
Right.
Because they don't want to act like real journalists and cover what got Ukraine into this war with Russia. And let me preface that by saying I am in no way supporting Putin's move and what he did and what he is doing. I am not pro-Russia. I don't think Tucker Carlson is either. because that's what the left now the last week has been doing to Tucker, of course, is,
Yep.
oh, right-wing propaganda is pumping up Putin and Russia and making them look amazing. And that's
Well, they say that
treasonous.
about
He's going against
anybody
America. Yeah,
anybody that disagrees with the narrative, right?
exactly. And now it's treasonous if you do. You saw what Mitt Romney, old Uncle Mitzi, just said about Democrat, that she should change her status to independent, I think.
I think so
Tulsi
too.
Gabbard, by the way, is a veteran. I respect her for that. I don't like some of her politics, some of her views on Second Amendment, whatever, but she served her country proudly. And at least now as a Democrat, she has the balls to stand up and say, hey, there's biolabs in Ukraine.
Right.
We told Russia that wouldn't happen years ago. Hey, we've been talking about coming into the EU and NATO. That was in the agreement we signed with them ages ago. We wouldn't do that. So does Russia have a complaint here? Yes. Is his actions and what he's doing correct? No, of course not. It's atrocious. However, what put all this together? Remember, in 2014, we helped to install the government of Ukraine and Zelensky. Okay.
Right.
And since then, what do we know about the Biden crime family and Ukraine and Russia and China, with Hunter taking all this money and the big guy, daddy, getting 10%? So you have a compromised White House. You have information not flowing freely to the American people about the connections of this president, his son, the previous and current Ukrainian regime, along with connections to Russia and China, all these natural gas and oil companies that Hunter took money from, but we're not getting that. So if you ask those questions, like is happening to me, to Tucker, to independent journalists, then immediately we're crazy right-wing conspiracy theorists, Nazi white supremacist, treasonous a-holes, whatever they want to call it. They've got an ism or an is or a phobia, whatever. They got a title for us every time, right?
Yeah, it's absurd because like the things that you've laid out are to me what makes the most sense, right? The reasoning behind this invasion or whatever this Cold War essentially. Well, it's not cold anymore, but what do you think the incentive is for the media to be so cohesive and aligned on this issue? Is it just monetary? Is it some sort of political interest? Do you think that, I mean, there's obviously a lot of reason to believe, but the media is somehow working with, let's say, the DNC or the Biden administration? Like, what is
sticking up for Joe Biden? Look, they dug their heels in to get rid of Trump so bad because they couldn't stand him and how he treated them and the truth that he told about them being fake news and liars. Right. So now it's like, oh man, we went all in. Like they didn't go 50% in, 100%. They went 150% in backing Biden for this presidential bid a year ago, right? We all know it. They did. Right. Come on. Now they're so damn deep. I don't think they feel maybe that they can't dig themselves out of it. So they got to continue to support Biden no matter what, because that's what you should do. Support the American president. To them, I would say, then what'd you do for 4 years under Trump?
Right. Yeah.
Because I haven't heard one of these lying pricks up here apologize for 5 years of coverage of the Russian collusion hoax, which we now know the dossier was fake and the whole damn thing was made up. But I've heard no mea culpas from Anderson Cooper or Don Lemon or Rachel Maddow going, you know what, we got it wrong. There's new evidence that came to light, blah, blah, blah. If I make a screw up on a small factual thing, the next night I go, hey, got to tell you, last night reported this, sorry, made a mistake. And then boom, I move on. But I bring it up because nobody's perfect. So if you get something wrong, just admit it to the viewer and move on. But they're so dug in, they have to support this regime so much because if not, guess what that means? That means Trump was right and they were wrong. And God forbid you'd ever get any of these owners of these networks or these overpaid, whiny ass little hosts to admit it.
Yeah, I can definitely see that as being a primary incentive in all this. And I do think that like just the general consensus is changing as to whether or not Trump was right. I mean, just gas prices alone, I think are causing more people. So I live in New Jersey and it's a very blue area. And I'm seeing more people, more and more just being like, man, we need Trump back right now. Not only are the gas prices crazy, but this whole thing happening with Russia and Ukraine would not have happened if it were under Trump. Like it's just becoming kind of common knowledge that the media is lying to you, right? And that they're not being. I mean, you heard
Trevor Noah. You heard Trevor Noah and Bill Maher this weekend. I mean, you're talking about two very liberal, and Noah even more than Bill because he's younger. Right. Both of them. Trevor Noah on the Daily Show came out and said, you know, didn't like Trump. He hated Trump. He admits it. And he talked shit about the guy for years. But he's like, but this didn't happen under Trump, and it probably wouldn't have. And he said, you know why? because he was that wild card that Putin and others probably thought, oh, dang, if I do something, he's wild enough to do something about it. They see weak Joe, compromised Joe, and they know they can get away with murder. Literally. Which is why you have Iran launching over a dozen missiles into Iraq over the weekend, almost hitting our consulate. You have China flexing on Taiwan. I guarantee you, mark my words, they'll hit them by the end of the year. Wow. And you got Putin going into Ukraine. Did any of that shit happen under Trump? No. Because, as Trump said at his rally in Florence, South Carolina this past Saturday, I was there, he said, the media, what did the fake news tell the world for a year leading up to Trump winning the presidency? What did they say in 2016? He will get us into World War III, probably with North Korea. Even Obama said it. Oh my God, he doesn't have the temperament. And so during his speech this weekend, he said, the fake news told you it was my personality that was going to get us into World War III, when in fact, it was my personality that kept us out. That's 110% true. 100%. Because people thought he was a little, not crazy, but ballsy enough to do something that might be deemed crazy because it isn't politically correct. Right. And so guess what? It had them all back on their heels going, yeah, we probably better not do anything to the US right now because that Trump guy might just kick our ass, whether it be in the way of sanctions or some bombs being dropped or something. And you know what? It kept everybody in check.
Right.
Now, the old phrase, speak softly, carry a big stick. Trump was a little different than that, right? He would speak loudly and carry a big stick. And it worked for 4 years.
It was
now
the Muhammad Ali approach,
walking around
right?
with a cane, a stick.
I love it. So, yeah, I mean, one last question before I let you go. I know that you're a busy man. You have some time. You have, a special allotted amount of time. But
no. I enjoyed chatting with you.
Awesome. The media itself, what do you see the future of this being? Because right now we're in this place where we're moving from mainstream media to what's been coined by people like Ben Shapiro as replacement media. Do you see that continuing to grow through things like Rumble and Truth Social and all these things? Yeah. Yes. Do you see that being where people go for news?
I want it to. I want CNN's numbers to continue to drop. We've seen them from 40 to 70%, depending on which primetime shows they lost since the election a year ago. I want people to start seeking out independent journalists and other sources of information, and then do what I do. Take in multiple sources all day. Right. Like I go on social media, I read a bunch of stuff there. Then I click the links that are on social media that usually take me to those independent reporters, read their reports. Then, of course, I sit here and watch the live reporting on the lying big three, the 24-hour cable a-holes, CNN, MSNBC, and Fox. And then once in a while, I switch and watch a little Newsmax, too, because don't take me there. I got a whole other story on why I don't trust Newsmax and Christopher Ruddy. Anyway, I take all the information in. And yes, I'll even read the Post or the Times because I want to see what kind of lies they're telling. Right. And then I take all that, right, and I try to find then online the evidence they're suppressing to prove because it's obviously every day you see it, it's day and night.
Yes.
You'll see the mainstream saying this and independent people saying this, and they're literally black and white. Right. So then I try to find the proof, and usually independent journalists come with it. But if they don't, if they're saying reports say or da-da-da, which is kind of lazy journalism, then I go find it. I find that soundbite where that politician, that person said this. Right. And then I can go look at these lying bastards and go, that's not what that person said. Right. You're skewing this. You're skewing the narrative. You're pushing your narrative. They took a 5-minute interview and they show 30 seconds and then they claim the person did this. So I just implore all your viewers, multiple sources.
Yeah,
watch Angel, watch more independent journalists, watch a Shapiro, watch One American News, but watch the bigs too. Yeah. Then go on, do some more research, find the videos on Rumble because you won't find them on YouTube. Because they're suppressing everything too, right? And you probably, if you do a Google search, you'll have to go to page 10 of what you're looking for. So try DuckDuckGo or an alternative source there. And then just compare the two. Go with an open, free mind. Don't even go in with your conservative values and go, I know they're going to be lying to me. Just do it like an independent. And then watch what happens. Every day, you'll put them together and go, holy shit. They're lying to the country, to the world, constantly. You just got to open your eyes, man. And I know you have yours open. Hopefully more people see independent shows like yours, others tune to One American News, which, by the way, I can't discuss it because of legal matters. We're not going anywhere, even though we might be kicked off of a certain provider. Okay. Wink, wink soon. But you can go to our website, OANN.com, and download our app direct from the website. And then you can watch us and stream us live right from the website every day, 24/7. And every penny of that $4.99 stays at One America News. You're not paying a Verizon or there's some companies I can't say, but you get my point.
Right.
You're not paying a third-party provider and these corrupt a-holes. So
Right.
if you want to keep watching OAN, just go to the website, do it there. The money stays right here with the hardworking 175 employees that put this product on every day.
Yeah, so I'll have those links down there for anybody that's interested in that as well.
Appreciate
you know, the OAN links, the links to Dan's show. I think what you laid out there is just a perfect example of, as an independent, as somebody that genuinely cares about the truth and wants to know how to go about that. I mean, just cross-referencing mainstream media with independent journalists, with, you know, things that might be on your social media feed. Like,
because conservative media can lie to you sometimes too.
Yes.
That's why I threw out Fox and Newsmax.
Absolutely.
That's why I want everybody to look at them all. Like, pick one story and go grab the Newsmax story tomorrow, then the Fox, then one or two of the big three liars, MSNBC or CNN, then grab Angel, Shapiro, somebody independent, Ivory Hecker, the guys at Project Bear, whatever. Check out some of the independents, and then of course OAN, and look at the difference in just like the headline, the clickbait, then look at the beginning, and you'll find like sometimes the headline doesn't even match the body of the story. The story will be opposite of what the headline said by some of these. It's insane to me.
Yeah, because they'll use literary devices, right? Like satire or something like that. And they'll say it's a satire headline when in reality, they're attempting to mislead you is what they're doing.
You're damn right they are. So multiple sources, be an open, free, critical thinker. No, I'm not talking about critical thinking or critical race theory. I'm talking about be a critical thinker where you go past your own beliefs, because like me, I'm a diehard conservative, right? However, I know conservative media has lied to me.
Absolutely.
Okay. Fox News does not tell the truth every damn day, every second they're on the air. But millions of Americans thought that for the last 20 some years.
Right.
Well, their eyes got opened up over the last year or so, right?
Absolutely.
So just take it all in, form your own opinion. And when you find the truth, here's the key. Angel, I'll leave you this. Share it with others.
Right.
Because we've got to get the word out, man. Too many people are sheep and brainwashed.
That's such great advice. Dan, thank you so much for taking some time to talk with Red Liberty Media. We really look up to what you guys do over at OAN and your show in particular. So we're very grateful to have you on here, and we're looking forward to just connecting in the future. And this should be out soon. So just stick with me while I stop recording, and thank you guys for watching.